I still remember the day everything changed. At 32 years old, I had finally achieved what felt impossible growing up in our small town. After years of saving, I purchased my first duplex, a beautiful brick property in a growing neighborhood. It was both my new home and my first real investment. I intentionally kept it quiet from my family given their history of financial expectations. That decision proved wise when during Sunday dinner, I overheard my parents casually telling my brother Jake that his whole family could move into my new place, rent-free. I nearly choked on my mashed potatoes. Where are you watching from today? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonates with you, hit that like button and subscribe to join our community of real-life storytellers. Now, let me tell you what happened next. Growing up, I quickly learned my place in our family dynamic. I was the responsible older son, while Jake was the golden child who could do no wrong. Even when we were kids, my parents had different standards for us. I needed straight, as to earn praise, while Jake got celebrations for barely passing classes. This pattern continued into adulthood, shaping our very different paths. After high school, I worked through college, earning a computer science degree, taking on student loans and working part-time jobs simultaneously. The sacrifices were worth it when I landed an entry-level position at a growing tech company in the city. 8 years of consistent work overtime and continuing education led to several promotions. I eventually became a senior systems architect, a position that finally allowed me to save for major investments. Throughout those years, my brother took a different route. Jake bounced between jobs, rarely staying anywhere longer than 6 months. He would call each new position his big break, only to quit when the work became demanding or he had conflicts with management. Our parents always made excuses for him, calling him a free spirit who just had not found his passion. My dream had always been building wealth through property ownership. My grandfather, the only one who seemed to recognize my work ethic, had been a small-time landlord. He would tell me, "Real estate is the surest path to financial independence, Derek. People always need somewhere to live." Those words stayed with me through every overtime shift and bonus I saved. The tension in our family had deep roots in how differently we were treated. From childhood, my parents established a pattern of expecting me to help Jake financially. The summer before college, they suggested I postpone my education so Jake could use my savings for a business idea. In my mid-20s, they volunteered my apartment as temporary housing when Jake lost his lease. Each time I was expected to sacrifice without question, because we were family. Jake married Amanda shortly after dropping out of community college. They quickly had 3 children, all under age 6 now. Their finances were perpetually chaotic. Jake would find work. They would immediately upgrade their lifestyle. Then when the inevitable job loss came, they would face crisis. My parents would pressure me to help, and I admit I did many times. The loans began small. A few $100s here for diapers and formula. $1,000 there for car repairs, so Jake could get to his new job. Over time, the amounts increased, while the repayments never materialized. At family gatherings, these debts went unmentioned. If I brought them up, my mother would change the subject, while my father would lecture me about the importance of family support. Last Christmas, I had finally refused to provide another emergency loan for their overdue rent. My mother cried. My father shouted about family loyalty, and Jake accused me of flaunting my success. That argument created a rift that took months to repair, but it also sparked something important in me. I realized I needed to create boundaries if I ever wanted my own financial security. For 2 years, I researched the housing market, learning everything I could about property investment. I lived well below my means, cutting expenses to maximize savings. My friends questioned why someone with my salary drove a 15-year-old car and lived in a modest studio apartment. Few understood I was playing a longer game. When I found the duplex, I knew immediately it was perfect. Located in an area with growing property values, it featured 2 identical 2-bedroom units with separate entrances. The previous owner had maintained it well, and inspection revealed only minor issues to address. The neighborhood was stable with good schools and low crime rates. Every factor I had on my checklist aligned. Closing on the property filled me with an indescribable pride. Signing those final papers, receiving the keys, walking through empty rooms that now belonged to me. This was not just a home, but the first step toward building real wealth. I planned to live in one unit while renting the other, using the rental income to offset the mortgage, and eventually fund additional property purchases. I approached the rental process methodically. I researched fair market rates, created detailed lease agreements, and established a thorough screening process for potential tenants. After interviewing several candidates, I selected the Gordon family. Brian and Laura Gordon had stable jobs, excellent credit, and references from previous landlords praising their reliability. Their 5-year-old daughter reminded me of myself at that age, quiet and observant. We signed a 1-year lease, with an option to renew their first month rent and security deposit already in my account. The monthly dinner at my parents' house came just after I had finalized the rental agreement with the Gordons. These dinners were a tradition since I moved out, though often stressful given the family dynamics. That particular Sunday seemed normal initially. Mom served her famous pot roast. Dad talked about neighborhood gossip, and I shared sanitized updates about work, carefully avoiding any mention of my property purchase. As we finished eating, my mother casually mentioned that Jake had received an eviction notice from his current apartment. Before I could even process this information, my father looked at me and said, matter-of-factly, "But it is all working out since Derek will let you all move into his new place." The statement hung in the air while I sat frozen. Jake immediately jumped in. "Thank God you bought that duplex when you did, bro. Talk about perfect timing. I have already started packing." My mind raced as I processed what was happening. They somehow knew about my duplex, which I had deliberately kept private. More shockingly, they had already decided without consulting me that Jake, Amanda, and their 3 children would be moving in. The assumption was so complete that Jake had already begun packing. I watched in stunned silence as Jake and my parents discussed the arrangement as if it were already settled. Amanda is so excited to have more space for the kids. Jake continued pulling out his phone to show pictures of furniture they planned to bring. Dad chimed in. "We figured your brother and his family could take the larger unit, and you could take the smaller one. It makes sense, since there are 5 of them, and only 1 of you." I realized then that they not only expected Jake to live in my duplex, but they assumed he would take the better unit and pay nothing for the privilege. Years of similar expectations flooded back, along with the resentment I had suppressed for so long. Yet something had changed in me. Instead of immediately protesting or giving in, I made a split-second decision to stay quiet about the fact that I had already rented 1 unit to the Gordons and planned to live in the other myself. "How did they find out about the duplex?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Mom waved dismissively. "Oh, Carol from church is friends with someone at the title company. Small world. She mentioned you had closed on the Burton Street property." I nodded slowly, taking a sip of water to buy time. I noticed they were all watching me, waiting for the enthusiastic agreement they expected. For once I did not give it to them. The pressure began immediately after the dinner revelation. My phone buzzed the very next morning with a text from my mother. "Jake needs to be out by the 15th. Will that work for move-in day? Send me your new address so I can update our records." I responded vaguely that I was still handling some property matters and would let them know when everything was settled. This non-committal answer triggered an immediate call from my father, which I let go to voicemail using work as an excuse when I texted him later. Jake called that evening, launching straight into logistics without even asking if the arrangement was acceptable to me. "So, the upstairs unit has the better water pressure, right? Amanda has sensitive skin, so good water pressure is important for her showers. Also, do you think we could paint the kids' rooms? They each want different colors." I deflected by saying renovations were still in progress, knowing full well that my new tenants would be signing their final paperwork the next day. Inside, my anxiety mounted with each assumption Jake made about his impending move into my property. The texts from Amanda started next. She sent photos of furniture layouts, asking which walls had studs for mounting their television and whether the kitchen had space for their extra freezer. She also mentioned they would need to convert the dining area into a bedroom for their oldest son. "I am sure you will not mind eating at the coffee table when you visit," she wrote, as if rearranging my home was a minor detail. My parents escalated their involvement, offering to help prepare the space for Jake's family. "Your mother and I can come over this weekend to clean and make sure everything is ready," my father texted. "We know you are busy with work, so we will handle it." Each message increased my anxiety, but I maintained my strategy of vague responses and strategic avoidance. Meanwhile, the actual move-in date for the Gordons approached. They had already given notice at their previous apartment and were scheduled to move in exactly 18 days after that fateful family dinner. The stress began affecting other areas of my life. At work, I found myself staring at my computer screen, unable to focus on code that would normally engage me completely. My team leader noticed, asking if everything was all right. I blamed it on allergies, unwilling to explain the true complexity of my situation. Sleep became elusive as I lay awake, imagining the inevitable confrontation. Would my family ever forgive me? Was I making a terrible mistake that would permanently damage our relationship? Yet beneath those worries was a growing certainty that I needed to break this pattern for both my sake and, ironically, for Jake's as well. My friend Thomas became my sounding board during this period. We met for drinks at a bar, far from where my family might run into us, and I explained the situation fully for the first time. "Let me get this straight," Thomas said after listening intently. "They decided without asking you that your brother could live rent-free in the property you bought with your own money, and now they are upset that you are not enthusiastically going along with it." When he put it that way, the absurdity of the situation became clearer. Yet decades of family dynamics made it difficult to stand firm. Every time I considered coming clean, I remembered my mother's tears during previous confrontations, my father's lectures about family duty, and Jake's accusations of selfishness. "You know this is financial abuse, right?" Thomas said, lowering his voice. "They are taking advantage of your success and using guilt to control you. You have every right to do what you want with your property." His words resonated, deeply validating feelings I had suppressed for years. Still, the prospect of the coming conflict filled me with dread. "I have to tell them before the Gordons move in," I admitted. But every time I try, they change the subject or talk over me. As the days passed, I finalized all arrangements with the Gordon family. Brian Gordon came by to sign the completed lease agreement, paying the remaining fees, and getting his copy of the keys. We discussed move-in procedures and maintenance protocols. The contrast between this straightforward business transaction and the emotional manipulation from my family was stark and enlightening. I continued addressing small repairs and improvements on both units. The satisfaction of seeing my investment plan coming together provided moments of peace amidst the growing family tension. I installed new kitchen faucets, replaced dated light fixtures, and repainted both front doors, taking pride in each improvement to my property. My family intensified their preparations as their self-declared move-in date approached. Jake texted about stopping by to take measurements for their furniture. "I can come by tomorrow after work. Just leave a key under the mat if you are not home," he wrote with his typical presumption. I responded that the property was not ready for visitors, buying more time while feeling increasingly cornered. Each day that passed without direct confrontation made the inevitable showdown more daunting. The breaking point came when Jake announced they would be moving in the following Saturday. "We will be there around 9 in the morning. Dad rented a truck, and some guys from my old job are coming to help with the heavy stuff. Mom is planning a little move-in party with sandwiches and stuff." This concrete timeline forced me to acknowledge that I could no longer avoid the confrontation. I tried calling my parents that evening, planning to finally explain the situation, but my mother cut the conversation short. "We cannot talk now, dear. We are helping Jake pack. So much to do before Saturday." The final piece fell into place when Brian Gordon confirmed their move-in date for that same Saturday, but at noon rather than morning. The inevitable collision was now scheduled down to the hour. That Saturday morning arrived, with picture-perfect weather that belied the storm about to break. I had been at the Duplex since dawn, making sure both units were ready for their respective occupants, though only the Gordons knew they had a place waiting for them. Brian and Laura Gordon arrived precisely at noon with their small moving truck. I greeted them warmly, feeling a mixture of pride in my property and anxiety about what would soon unfold. Their daughter, Emily, immediately ran to explore her new bedroom, while Brian and I discussed the parking situation for unloading their belongings. We were examining the back storage area when a second moving truck pulled into the driveway, followed by my parents' car. Jake stepped out first, directing the friends he had brought to help. Amanda began organizing their children, who spilled out of the back seat of my parents' sedan. The cacophony of their arrival drew the Gordons' attention. "Who is that?" Laura asked, her brow furrowed in confusion. Before I could respond, my father spotted me and called out, "Derek, we are here. Why is there another moving truck?" He approached rapidly, his expression shifting from confusion to suspicion. I stepped forward, feeling oddly calm now that the moment of truth had arrived. "Dad, I need to explain something," Jake interrupted, pointing at the Gordons. "Who are these people, and why are they unloading stuff at our new place?" The scene escalated quickly as understanding dawned on my family. Jake stormed toward me, his face flushed with anger. "You rented the duplex to strangers when you knew we needed a place to live. What the hell?" Amanda burst into tears, pulling her children close. "Where are we supposed to go now? The kids have nowhere to sleep tonight." My father demanded an explanation in front of everyone, his voice rising to a volume that attracted curious looks from neighboring houses. "We discussed this at dinner. Your brother needs this place. How could you do this behind our backs?" The irony of his accusation was not lost on me. "I never agreed to that arrangement, Dad. You all decided it without asking me." Jake scoffed loudly. "Of course you agreed. You sat there and let us talk about moving in. You knew we were packing and planning." I took a deep breath, aware of the Gordon family awkwardly continuing their move-in during this family drama. Actually, I had already signed a lease agreement with the Gordons before our dinner. I was in shock when you all announced your plans for my property without consulting me. My mother stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "You are choosing money over your own family. How could you be so heartless? Your brother has 3 children. The accusation stung, but I held my ground. This is not about money, Mom. This is about respect. You all made plans for my property without asking me, just like you have always made decisions about my resources without considering my needs." Years of pent-up frustration finally found their voice. "Do you know how many thousands of dollars I have loaned Jake that he never repaid? $6,000 for that car that he wrecked 3 months later. $4,000 when he got fired from the warehouse job. Countless smaller amounts for rent bills and emergencies. When have any of you considered what I might need?" Jake dismissed my words with a wave. "Oh, please, mister. Success story. You make more than enough to help out family. Not all of us got the breaks you did." That comment broke something in me. Breaks I worked through college while you dropped out. I stayed at the same company for 8 years, building my career, while you quit every job that required actual effort. I lived in a tiny studio apartment and drove an old car so I could save for this property. None of this was handed to me. Mom tried to interject, but I continued, my voice steady but intense. I bought this duplex as an investment in my future. I need the rental income to cover the mortgage. This property is crucial to my financial security. Why is it always my responsibility to sacrifice for Jake? When will he take responsibility for his own family?" Dad pointed a finger at me. "We raised you to put family first. Family helps family. That is how it works." I looked him directly in the eyes. Enabling is not helping, Dad. I have been giving Jake financial bailouts for years, and what has changed? Nothing. He is still in the same situation, still expecting others to solve his problems. The confrontation reached its peak when Jake shouted, "So, what are we supposed to do? Live on the street?" I met his gaze steadily. "You have options. You could find an apartment within your budget instead of always living beyond your means. You could keep a job longer than a few months. You could develop a skill that employers value. There are solutions that do not involve taking advantage of me." Amanda sobbed louder, using her children as emotional leverage. Your own nieces and nephews, Derek. How will we explain to them that their uncle does not care if they have a home? That manipulation tactic might have worked in the past, but not today. I looked at my brother directly. I love your kids, Amanda. That is why I want them to have a father who models responsibility and self-reliance, not one who expects endless bailouts. My mother made one final emotional appeal. If you go through with this, do not expect things to be the same between us. You are choosing strangers over your own blood. I nodded slowly, accepting the ultimatum for what it was. Then that is my choice to make. This is my property, my investment, and my future. I am sorry you are disappointed, but I need to do what is right for me this time. The standoff ended when my father threw up his hands in disgust. Come on, everyone. We are leaving. Apparently we do not have a place to stay after all. He glared at me with a mixture of anger and disbelief before herding my brother's family back to their vehicles. I stood motionless as they drove away, Jake's moving truck following behind. The silence they left was broken only by the sound of the Gordons continuing to unload their belongings. The immediate aftermath was exactly as painful as I had feared. My family left in anger with my father's parting words, making it clear that I had damaged our relationship in ways that might never heal. Jake sent a series of increasingly hostile text messages accusing me of betrayal and callousness. My mother called daily, her voicemails alternating between tearful pleas and guilt-inducing silence. After helping the Gordons settle into their unit, I introduced myself to them, properly apologizing for the uncomfortable scene they had witnessed. To their credit, Brian and Laura were understanding. Sometimes family is complicated, Brian offered simply. We appreciate you honoring our agreement despite the pressure. Moving into my own unit felt bittersweet. The space was exactly what I had wanted. Yet the achievement was tarnished by the family conflict. For the first few days, I jumped whenever my phone rang, expecting another angry call. Sleep came fitfully as conversations with my family played on repeat in my mind. Friends became my lifeline during those difficult weeks. Thomas and other close friends reassured me that I had made the right decision, even as I questioned myself during low moments. You finally stood up for yourself, Thomas reminded me. That is something to be proud of, not ashamed of. The rental arrangement proved successful, despite its contentious beginning. The Gordons were ideal tenants, quiet and respectful of the property. The monthly rental income covered a significant portion of my mortgage, validating my investment strategy. This practical success provided tangible evidence that my decision, however painful, had been financially sound. 3 months passed, with minimal family contact. Thanksgiving approached traditionally, a major family gathering in our household. The prospect of either attending and facing ongoing tension or skipping it and causing further division weighed heavily on me. 2 days before the holiday, I received an unexpected text from my mother, simply asking, "Will you be joining us for dinner? Thursday." The message contained no guilt trip, no emotional manipulation, just a simple question. I responded affirmatively, preparing myself for whatever reception awaited me. The reunion was initially awkward. Conversation remained superficial, carefully navigating around the conflict that had divided us. Jake and Amanda arrived late, their children running to hug everyone, unaware of the tension among the adults. I noticed immediately that Jake seemed different, more subdued, less entitled in his demeanor. During dinner, my father made a surprising comment about the rental property market in our area. "It seems like a smart investment strategy considering housing prices these days," he said, not quite meeting my eyes but clearly extending an olive branch. Later, while helping with dishes, my mother spoke privately to me. "We should have respected your decision about your property," she admitted quietly. "It was wrong to make plans without asking you." The most unexpected moment came from Jake. As we watched football after dinner, he mentioned they had found an apartment in a neighboring town. "The commute is longer, but the rent is within our budget," he said. Then added something that stunned me. "I have been at the new job for 3 months now. Longest I've stuck with anything in a while." He hesitated before continuing. "I have been thinking about what you said that day, about taking responsibility. You were right. I relied on bailouts for too long. It is actually kind of a relief, figuring things out on our own. The acknowledgement was simple, but profound. For the first time in our adult lives, Jake was taking steps toward financial independence. Our relationship remained fragile, the hurt still fresh, but something fundamental had shifted. The following months brought gradual healing. I established clear boundaries that my family surprisingly began to respect. My father stopped making financial demands on my behalf. My mother called regularly, but accepted when I could not talk or needed space. Jake and I developed a different kind of relationship, less defined by financial dependence and more by mutual respect. As the duplex increased in value and the rental arrangement continued successfully, I began researching additional investment properties. My parents expressed genuine interest in my plans rather than seeing them as resources for Jake's benefit. This shift represented a profound change in our family dynamic. The confrontation that I had feared for so long had actually been necessary. By refusing to enable Jake's financial dependence, I had inadvertently given him the push he needed towards self-sufficiency. By standing my ground, I had gained something I never expected from my family: respect. The experience taught me that true family support means encouraging independence, not creating dependency. Sometimes love requires difficult boundaries. The most valuable lesson was learning that I could advocate for my own needs without losing my family connections, though those connections had transformed into healthier forms. Today, a year after that dramatic showdown in front of my duplex, I have added a second investment property to my portfolio. Jake has maintained his job and recently received a promotion. Our family gatherings still have moments of tension, but they are no longer dominated by unspoken expectations and resentment. I realize now that standing your ground can sometimes be the most loving choice, not just for yourself, but for everyone involved. Healthy relationships must be built on mutual respect and boundaries, not obligation and guilt. The foundation of true family support is encouraging each other's growth and independence, not perpetuating cycles of dependency. Have you ever had to make a difficult stand against family expectations to protect your future? How did you handle the conflict? And what was the outcome? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe to hear more real-life lessons. Sometimes the most painful confrontations lead to the healthiest relationships. Thank you for listening to my story today. And remember that establishing boundaries, while difficult, is often the most loving gift you can give, both yourself and others.